Hey everyone, welcome to this tutorial. Here I will show you what is AWS CLI, exactly how the flow works, and then how to set up AWS CLI in different machines, like different OS like Mac, Windows, and Linux. Then I will show you some demo with the AWS CLI. Okay, that's the entire outline. So let's get started. So first, what is AWS CLI? Just looking at, if you just go to Google and search for AWS CLI. If you click on the first link you got, you'll come to this page. Now, before going through all this, you have to understand why you should even use the AWS CLI, right? So let's go back to our AWS console. So if you log into AWS, you will see this page. Okay, here you will see a lot of services. If you click on services, you'll see a lot of services here, right? A lot of which where mostly AWS EC2, S3, RDS are the most common ones. Okay, so these are the services that we access via the web page. Now, what is AWS CLI? Now we understand. AWS CLI allow us to do the same thing but from the command line. So what is command line? Like this in the MacBook, this is the command line. For Windows, it will be Windows Terminal. So Linux or Ubuntu, like Unix systems, is the terminal directly. Okay. Now let me show via the diagram so it will be very easy to understand. So let's say this is your AWS account. Okay. AWS, where you have different services like EC2, S3, RDS, and so on. Doesn't matter. Many services, right? You don't remember all the services. Okay. Now, how we can access all these services? First and very common way, I think everyone know, via the browser, right? So our browser, we can do that as a user, right? Now, what are the other ways? Other most popular way is to do via the AWS CLI. Okay. And what is another way? Via the AWS SDK. Now, when to use browser, when to use SDK, and when to use the AWS CLI. That's very important. Okay. So use the browser if you don't have all these expertise, because this needs you to have some command line knowledge, some commands knowledge. For this CLI, for SDK, you need to have some programming knowledge like in Python, Node.js, or similar kind of programming knowledge. But if you don't have all these two, okay, then go for this browser. For there you can easily manage the services, right? Now, if you're a developer or you can run commands or system administrator, for you, AWS CLI is good. Well, any developer I think is good, and exclusive to different developer. If they are using AWS services dynamically via the programming languages, then use the AWS SDK. Okay. Now, what is AWS SDK? We'll be not covering the AWS SDK in this session, but let me show you in this just in case, because you should have the knowledge. What is AWS SDK? So search by AWS SDK and programming toolkit. So you'll see for C++, Go, Java, JavaScript, .NET, Node.js, PHP, Python, Ruby, this AWS SDK available. For today, we'll be learning about AWS command line, that is AWS CLI tools. So let's go forward to that way. So this is our topic. Okay. So you understand now that why even we'll use it. We'll use it AWS CLI to easily manage directly from our command line instead of going and login and doing two-factor authentication and all this complex steps. You can just do directly from your command line. Is that very easy? Okay. Now, for this to work with AWS CLI, you need to install the AWS CLI first. How to do it? If you come to this page, like I show, just go to Google, search for AWS CLI. You'll find it, and you will see getting started. So click on the getting started. Okay, you'll see there. Now, if you see here installing the AWS CLI, just click on that. There's two versions. Version 2, which is the latest one, and version 1. Now, you cannot have 1 and 2 together. It will create the conflict. So, it's good to go. It's best to go with the latest version. If you click on the version 2, you will see 4 options: either Docker, Linux, macOS, and Windows. Let's first let me show you how to do it in the macOS. Let's do the macOS. Okay. So remember that you cannot have one and two together, it will become a problem because AWS is common name. Okay. How to install it? First, you have to in the browser download the macOS package file. Just click on it. Let's do it. Click on this. It will ask you to just step by step. Then click on continue, 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 agree. Let's continue. AWS CLI to install. Let me give them password. It will take a few seconds, so wait, not a problem. Close it. So let's see AWS version to see that if it's installed properly or not. Okay, you see AWS CLI version 2 installed. We are good. So now this part is also done. Now let's do install AWS CLI in a Windows computer. To do that, I don't have a Windows computer with me right now. So what I'll do, I have already created one machine in the light shell. If you have your own machine, which is fine. For me, I'm using light shell. We have already launched a Windows instance. I'm just doing RDP to it. Okay. Whatever. Okay, after the browser opened, go to Google. Go to Google and search for AWS CLI. Just click on it. There again, click on the getting started, or you can see in the right side also there is option to download. You can click on that also. Download and run. Okay, save the file. Okay, I think it's saved now. We can open the file. It will open the installer. Just do next. Install and finish. How to check is installed properly or not? Similar way, just search for terminal. Or command prompt. Sorry, in Windows is command prompt. So AWS version, and it should show the version properly. Yeah, it worked. So now I have shown in how to do for the Mac, how to do for the Windows. Now let me show you for the normal Ubuntu or any kind of Unix machine. Here click on search for the EC2 service, and we will start a Ubuntu instance so that I can show you how to install AWS CLI in a Ubuntu machine. So click on the Linux instance, launch instance, and we can see if you want to pre-installed machine, you can go for Amazon Linux to AMI, all the CLI and all other many other tools all pre-installed. So you can go for that. Suppose you're not using the Amazon Linux to AMI, you want to go for another type of OS, then you can follow the steps. So let's select Ubuntu Server 18.04 LTS. I'm good to go with all the default config just for the demo. Make sure that you enable the port 22, otherwise you will be not able to SSH into the machine. If you don't have already existing key pair, you can create a new key pair and download it, I already have one, so I'll just go with the existing one. Okay, it's done now. Click on the instance ID. It's in pending state. So give it few seconds. So it'll fill up soon. Once it up, we will use SSH. Okay, it's up now. So let's do SSH into the machine, and we can continue installing the AWS CLI in this instance. This is our SSH command. So let's create new console, new terminal window. Let's make it big so you can see properly. Okay, copy paste the command to do SSH into the machine. The Ubuntu machine we have newly created. Okay, so now we have a Ubuntu 18.04 LTS version up and running. Let's install the AWS CLI in this machine. So let's go again back to the page where you are seeing. Go to the getting started. Installing AWS CLI version 2 for Linux this time. So what need to be done? So we are using Linux 86 64-bit. So let's first download. So it's simple, just downloading the binary and installing it. Let's do that. Okay, unzip command is not there, so we just install sudo apt get install unzip. Typo fixed. Let's try to run again. And it's done. Okay, so let's see AWS version, and it's working fine. So now we have installed in MacBook, we have installed in Windows machine, and I've shown you just installing in a Ubuntu instance. It could be your local Ubuntu. Now that we have installed also in Ubuntu, why not let's try to run some of the commands and see it works or not. So what if we try and see that how many file buckets our S3 have? Let's say AWS, like every command should start with AWS, then the service name S3 and list. You'll see unable to locate credentials because you have to configure the credentials. Now you can, if you're working with AWS EC2 instances, you can add role, and otherwise you can just configure like normal machine. So my suggestion will be, if you are working on the local machine, then do AWS configure, not a problem. But if you are working with the EC2 instances, it's better to do with role. I will show you just for the demo purpose. I will show how the role work first, and then using AWS config. Okay, so let's go. Let's click on the EC2 instance, and there I will just go to IAM. So go to services, IAM. Click on the IAM to load the identity and access management page. There we'll create a role for EC2. Okay, so go to roles. Go to roles, then click on create role, then select the EC2 because you're creating role for EC2. Then click on the next permissions. Then search for S3 because we want to test out S3. We want to access. Suppose we want to access the S3 services. So S3 full access. X tags. You do not need any tags. Let's say EC2 S3 access for Ubuntu instance. Okay, so EC2 S3 access for Ubuntu instance. Now we can create role, and once the role created, go to the EC2 instance again. Go to instances. Let's see what was the exit, and it's 2089 created. Right click on the instance item, then go to the security, and there you will see the option modify IAM role. Click on that and select the IAM role. So what you are giving the S3. So we have created EC2, yeah, this one's right. EC2 S3 access or Ubuntu instance, select this one and save it. Now previously when we tried, let's see, clear the screen. So previously when we tried this command AWS S3ls, we got error, right? If we do now, it will list all the buckets I have, right? So this is how easy to integrate AWS CLI. Now again, I told you that I will show using the AWS configure option also. For local instance you cannot add role. For those cases you have to do AWS configure. I will show you just a moment. Okay, so let's remove the role so that I can show using the AWS config option. Security, modify IAM role, and just no IAM role. Save it. Detach. Confer detachment. Okay, detached. Now if we try and go for the clear the screen, clear the command console, then try to run the AWS S3ls and see unable to locate the credential. You can configure credential by running AWS configure. So let's do it. What if we run it AWS configure, you will see they will be asking for first AWS key ID and then for the AWS secret key. Let's do it. So to do that, we'll go to IAM again. Then we'll go to users. Then create an add user. Let's say Ubuntu EC2 CLI access user. CLI user access. Okay. You want to have the programmatic access because there's two types of access: programmatic access and AWS management access. If you want to create, if you are creating for a person or your own self or someone else, then you should maybe go for both based on your requirement, or just the AWS management console. There, if you click on that, it will be asking for the password and all. But for this demo, we just want the programmatic access. Click on permissions. Here I want to give it S3 access. Attach policies directly and look for the S3. AWS S3 full access. Click on tags, click on preview, and create user. If you do that, it will give you two things. One is the access key ID. Let's put it here. And asking for the AWS secret key. Let's do that. Default region. Now it will be the default region you work for. Here it's US West 2. So let's do that. Now it should be this region should be where you want your server to be running normally. And you normally work with the default region. If you don't mention a region, there will be the resource created. Default output format is JSON. There is text also, other format also, but JSON is the commonly used one. Okay, done. Now if you run AWS S3ls, it's showing me all the buckets I have. Let's clear the screen. Okay, so now you see this is how we have configured the AWS EC2 in normal instance, or you can configure your local terminal. Now suppose you are working with multiple projects, so what to do for that cases? So if you see, there is a folder called AWS created. Okay, let's go to that folder. Okay, remove this unnecessary part. Now you want to make sure, suppose suppose you are working with multiple projects, then which is intended for only one config, right? Those cases, if you want to manage for multiple clients at once in your local, normally just for your local local machine. So we have to for that we have to configure profiles. Now what is profile? Let me show you. So as soon as you created a new instance, so as soon as you configure the AWS CLI, if you go to .aws folder, so you see into AWS folder, there is two files, config and credential. Let's see, cat config, you will see the default region and output is there, and the credential. If we do cat credentials, just looking what it is, this is the profile name and this is the access key and ID. So how to add additional profiles? So just edit sudo nano credentials. Let's say you want to have profile of a different profile, and for this different profile, let's say project A, okay, project 1, whatever it is. Access key will be access key ID will be different, and the access key ID and access key both will be different for those. So let's suppose we have that another profile, save it, and if we do AWS S3 ls, then dash profile, and then give the profile name. So for our case it was project 1, and it gives us the list of the buckets again. Okay, so I have shown you how to configure access for your AWS CLI. Now we'll jump into the more demos. Okay, so let's get started. Now that we have learned how to give access to our AWS command line interface or AWS CLI, let's give the CLI full admin access and try out different commands. Okay, to do that, again go to the AWS console, go to IAM, then go to users. We have created the user, right? AWS EC2 CLI user access. There, just say remove the existing EC2 S3 access and give it a few seconds. Okay, and add permission for full admin access, so that you can try out any commands without any permission issues. Okay, let's get back to the AWS CLI, the main screen. There, click on the get started, and you'll see in the very right side there are options like using CLI, using the AWS CLI with AWS services. Now these are the very limited ones showing. This is a high level one. If you just go to Google and search about AWS CLI reference for any service, but you can just go, and here you will have full service, full list of services and all the commands associated with it. For this tutorial, let's go with the most commonly used one. Okay, let's go with the AWS IAM, like creating a IAM user group. Okay, what to do for that? Just open the console, just refresh, okay, and run AWS IAM create group, then the group name. Let's do that, group, and let's say my test group. If you do that, that's it, it's created. And just to confirm that it's created fine, click on the group and see this new group created. Okay, let's try the next command. Now let's try the new user, create new user command. So AWS IAM ID create user and then the username. Okay, let's say test user. Okay, and again let's see the user created fine or not, and see test user created fine. It's so fast, isn't it? Okay, now what if you want to like add the user to the newly created user to the newly created group? Let's do that. So to do that, AWS IAM add user to group, this command we will use, then the username, mention the username here, and then the group name. Let's do that. So let me make it big. Okay, so the username is here test user, and the group name is my test group. And see, it's done. Now let's go to the AWS IAM and just click on the groups. If you see one user added, click on the group, you will see is the test user added. Okay, now let's try the next command. To verify that IAM group contains my user. Yeah, I just show you from the AWS console UI, but you can just do via this way. If you do AWS IAM get group, then the group name, and the group name is my test group, you will see the added user details in the group data. See, in the JSON, you can see the user data here and the group data here, of course. Okay, now let's try out the EC2. So you can create a EC2 from here. Like if you go to EC2, give it some time. Yes, in the EC2 there is a section called key pairs. So let's search for that. See here, this is the section key pairs under the network and security key pairs. You can just create a key pair from here. They give the name test key and click on the create pair. Okay, and it will ask you to save the key. Similarly, you can also generate the key from the command line. Let's see how it works. So to do that, the command is AWS EC2 key pair, key name, then the key name, then the query, key material, output text, then the file of the file key ultimately. Let's do that. So clear the screen. Okay, let's see. AWS EC2 create key pair. Key pair, key name, say my EC2 access. Okay, and the file name should be again my EC2 access. Let's do it. So if we do ls, I think we get it here. It should not be. Just create here. Make the file change. Because in the AWS folder, we should not make any kind of change. Even in EC2 itself, we should not make this change. Just for test, I'm showing you. And you can create for a number of times whatever you need to new key. And you'll see the new key here. If you do cat my EC2 access.pam, you'll see the certificate here. You can copy paste and create a local or download it as you may like. Now we have created the key pair now, and which looks like this, of course. To connect with the using this key pair, you have to make it the access the file permission to 400. Okay, and to see that if the key pair with the name exists or not, you can run this command. Let's see what was the file name again. Oh, we can do ls anyway. So key name my EC2 access 1, and it will show us the key data, right? That easy. Now what if we want to create the security group? We can do similar way. You can just follow the commands and do it. Suppose you want to create a EC2 instance from the command line. How to do it? We can just keep AWS EC2 run instances, image ID, then the image that image ID, then count how many you want to create, EC instance type, what is the instance resource allocation you want to do, like 1 GB, like it's 32 micro, so 1 GB RAM and 1 CPU. Similarly, if you want to different and upper or lower category or instance type, you can do that. Okay, so this is the command. to do it. Let's do it. So AWS, copy it. Here we will make a change. In the image ID, we want to give a good image ID. Let's say we give, let's go to, if you go to EC2 screen, and say launch instance, you see this images here, and ID is that this is the image ID AMI. So let's copy this one and change it. We want to create one instance, and you want to, actually forgot to do the creating group. So let's create the group first. This is the group. So to create it, we have to give the VPC ID. Let's go to our EC2. Let's search for the VPC. Click on the VPCs. You can find your default VPC or whatever your target VPC in this list. This is our default VPC. See the option here? Yes, default. So let's do it. And we'll create the security group. And I think, yeah, this is it. If you want to see what your security group have, then you can search describe security group. So AWS EC2 describe security group names, then give the group name here. We have given the group name as my security group, and it will give you the details here. Clear the screen. Now let's create a EC2 instance. So AWS, again copy this command, and then change the AMI ID, that image ID. You can find image ID if you just go to EC2. Then launch instance and the image ID here. So let's change that. Then how many instances you want to run. Then the instance type due to micro. Key pair should be the name of the key pair we created. You can just see the name here. We just go to EC2. Then go below key pairs. We created my EC2 access 1. Just specify the name. Now we have to mention the security group. If I'm right, we created my SG, right? This one. So change that. Then the subnet ID. You can go to VPC. From there, click on the VPCs and let it load. Click on VPC ID. This is the VPC ID. So if you go to subnets and search by the VPC ID, you will find the subnets under this VPC ID. Let's copy this subnet. Anyone, or you can give multiple also. No, one subnet, one instance can have only one subnet ID. Okay, make sure you remember that part. The parameter group name, security group ID MySGs. Okay, now we have to make sure. Let's go to the security groups. Actually, created security groups. There should be. Click on the security create security group, and then the VPC. Oh, this is a security group ID. So I think we give the wrong ID. So let's change it and do this. Okay, it's saying that subnet ID is not available, so we can just try for other subnets. So let's go to VPC, copy the VPC ID, go to subnets, search for it. Let's try this VPC, this subnet ID. And yeah, this time it's created and done. So you can go to EC2 console and see the newly created instance available there or not. And it's available here. So newly created instance ID is this. Let's search by the instance ID. On the running, and then search by the instance ID. You will see it's created. Okay, so we are done with the EC2 example also. Now let's play with the Amazon S3. So here are the high level S3 commands which we'll be using very often. So to create bucket, you have to use AWS S3, the service name, then make bucket. So let's do it. Let's clear the screen. AWS S3 MB, then call it Sandip AWS CLI demo. So we are creating a bucket called Sandip AWS CLI demo. I think we forget the S3 at the beginning, and it's done. So new bucket created. Let's see it's created successfully or not. So search for the S3, go there, and this is the newly created bucket. Search by it, and you can see here it's created. If you want to see what are the total list of buckets you have, you can always, like in the beginning I have shown, this 3ls, it will list all the buckets. If you want to delete bucket, suppose we created this new bucket, right? And you want to delete it. So you can do AWS S3 remove bucket. RB means remove bucket, and then the bucket ID, bucket name. Oh, again, you have to give S3 in the beginning, otherwise you will see error. And it should get deleted. You can move up like objects from your machine to the target, like here it's showing from one bucket to another bucket, or local file to the S3. Let's create the bucket again, demo 2. So make bucket and then, oh sorry, not, it's not deleting, it's the creating. So make bucket. Okay, so I've created new bucket. Now let's move some file. To have some file, let's create a file first. So let's say nano, some sample file, just .txt. Give it some value, doesn't matter what you give. Then save it. Then you can see this is the command. So AWS S3 MV, then the file name, that is test.txt, then the bucket name. Okay, and if you come here, and the bucket is this, copy the bucket ID, the bucket name, go and search by the bucket. I think you have just refreshed the bucket list, and then search by the bucket is there, and see the file here. Similarly, you can run other commands also. Just go to the example part, and you'll see the example there. It's easy to use and do it. So I think you understand the AWS CLI very clearly. If you have any questions, you can always ask me directly.